We touched on this idea of innate fears in everyday life in the discussion of the reptilian brain on a plane session, but we're going to expand upon this concept. Previously, we looked at how the fight or flight response may exert itself in unsuspecting ways in daily life. But now we're going to take a slightly different approach and look at some surprising ways our innate fears may be getting triggered in the first place. As we've learned, there are 8 innate fears all humans share. These include pain, isolation, incapacitation, suffocation, unknown, abnormal, sudden movements or movements towards you, loud noises, and falling. With the help of Anxious Andy, we're going to see how normal, everyday things can trigger our innate fears. Now, we have known for a long time that sudden movements or things moving towards us can trigger an innate fear. And this is probably because predators used to hunt us humans in the wild long ago. In 2014, researchers made a few surprising discoveries. In a series of experiments, they found that test subjects watching videos of things moving toward them elicited some form of a fear response. This was true whether it was animals or other people appearing to be moving closer, but also objects and even letters getting larger as they appeared to come closer. Now, the test subjects didn't go running, screaming out of the room when they saw the letter A coming closer, but there were measurable physiological reactions. Remember, innate fears trigger involuntary fear responses, and this was the case. They found to anything that appeared to come closer. But what was truly surprising was this was not limited to just objects. Things in time could also trigger this involuntary fear response. Things like birthdays, anniversaries, and even deadlines. If we think about it, when we use phrases like the deadline is approaching, or the moment of truth is near, or the 11th hour is upon us, Anxious Andy, with the best of intentions, sees a deadline coming towards us and apparently taps into our innate fear of predators coming towards us and sounds the alarm, triggering our innate fear response. As we discussed, not everyone responds to fear the same way, so some people will thrive on it, while other people will freak out. The point is, something as simple as a deadline or an upcoming anniversary to an event can trigger this release of fear response hormones and chemicals in our body, readying us for fight or flight. But since the threat is just a date on the calendar, we're often stuck with these stress hormones coursing through our bodies with nowhere to go until they get unleashed upon an unsuspecting coworker or your spouse or a particularly unlucky dog or cat. The innate fear of pain, rooted in its potential to lead to death, can be hijacked by Anxious Andy to cause us to avoid exercise or medical or dental procedures. This fear-induced avoidance of pain can also extend to emotional discomfort and pain, like confrontational interactions with others, including ending relationships or friendships, even those that may be unhealthy. Ending relationships or friendships can also induce the innate fear of isolation. Isolation in the ancient past meant the likelihood of death. You needed the clan to survive, to find food and protection. Today, our fear of isolation can cause us to stay in a job we hate, spend time with friends we don't like, and be in a romantic relationship with someone untrustworthy. It goes further. Our innate fear of isolation can also cause us to go along with the crowd, even if what the crowd is doing is unethical, illegal, or immoral. Research has shown there is an inherent drive within us to seek acceptance and belonging within social groups. It's this innate fear of isolation in action. When we feel isolated or excluded, it triggers our primal fear of being disconnected from the safety and support of the group. This fear of isolation taps into our fundamental human needs for companionship, support, and validation. The need to fit in causes us to conform to social norms, adopt group behaviors, and seek approval from others to gain acceptance and to avoid rejection. This desire to belong can influence many aspects of our behavior, including choices in our clothing, our interests, beliefs, and our social interactions. Now, marketing and advertisers often attempt to tap into our innate fear of isolation and our need to belong, suggesting that their products will give us status, help us be accepted, and not feel isolated. Alcohol commercials show people together having a good time. Car commercials show families happy together in their vehicles. Smartphone commercials depict people connected and engaged, sharing experiences and moments through their devices, taking selfies, families video chatting with distant loved ones, or sharing content and experiences on social media. They never show an intoxicated driver in jail for drunk driving after killing a family in their vehicle while sending angry texts to their ex. Some studies suggest that many change initiatives fail to meet all their objectives or deliver their expected results. These failures can stem from a variety of reasons, but one underlying reason is, at least in part, the innate fear of the unknown and the abnormal. Resistance to any kind of change is related to our innate fear of the unknown. When organizations introduce change initiatives, they disrupt established routines, processes, and the norms, creating a sense of uncertainty and unpredictability. This uncertainty triggers people's fear response of the unknown as they perceive the change as a threat to their comfort, stability, and their sense of security. People tend to resist change because it introduces unfamiliar elements into their environment, challenging their existing beliefs, habits, and expectations. Resistance to change manifests in many forms, including skepticism, reluctance, passive-aggressive behavior, or just outright opposition. Employees may express concern about the potential negative consequences of the change, fear a job loss or reduced job security, or apprehension about their own ability to adapt to the new roles and expectations. Additionally, individuals may resist change because of the perceived loss of control or autonomy over their work environment. When we feel that our control over our environment and circumstances or outcomes are threatened, it can also activate our innate fear of incapacitation, thanks to Special Anxious Andy. Anxious Andy misinterprets the situation, magnifies potential threats, and induces our innate fear responses. In the context of loss of control or autonomy, Anxious Andy may amplify our feelings of vulnerability and insecurity, leading us to react defensively in order to regain a sense of control and competence. We may feel a heightened need to assert ourselves and our competence and maintain a facade of control by micromanaging or withholding information or knowledge, and a reluctance to collaborate or delegate tasks to others. These behaviors, driven by the fear of incapacitation, can undermine teamwork, communication, and productivity. They create barriers to collaboration, innovation, and growth as people prioritize self-preservation over collective success. In older adults, fear of incapacitation may lead to overcompensating or avoidance behavior, including limiting their personal growth opportunities and leading to missed experiences or achievements. Anxious Andy can also twist our fear of incapacitation in other unexpected ways. Our fear of incapacitation may develop a deep-seated fear of being stuck in various aspects of our life, such as a job or a relationship or obligations that do not align with our values, interests, or long-term goals. We may believe that we will become emotionally or intellectually incapacitated by the monotony or lack of fulfillment in our work, emotionally draining relationships, or powerless to break free from obligations, all of which Anxious Andy uses to trigger our stress response to incapacitation. As a result, we may experience feelings of restlessness, dissatisfaction, and anxiety about our career, feel concerns about losing autonomy within the confines of a relationship, or feeling guilt or societal pressure to fulfill obligations at the expense of our own well-being. For individuals who've served time in jail or prison, reintegrating into society can be an immense challenge, fraught with many obstacles and barriers. One significant hurdle faced by ex-convicts is the pervasive stigma and discrimination they encounter due to their criminal history. This societal rejection can marginalize, often triggering profound feelings of incapacitation, as ex-convicts find themselves excluded from essential opportunities and avenues for social and economic advancement. Many former inmates faced obstacles in attaining loans or financial assistance to start a business, pursue education, or secure stable housing. This lack of access to financial resources can severely limit their ability to establish themselves economically and achieve financial stability, perpetuating cycles of poverty and dependence. They also often encounter significant barriers to securing housing and employment due to their criminal history. Many landlords and employers conduct background checks as part of their screening process and may refuse to rent apartments or offer jobs to individuals with a criminal record, regardless of their qualifications or their rehabilitation efforts. This systemic discrimination further exasperates feelings of incapacitation. The societal stigma and ostracism faced by ex-convicts extends beyond the realms of finance, housing, and employment, permeating social interactions and relationships. Ex-convicts may experience social exclusion and alienation, as they are often perceived as outcasts or pariahs within their communities. Friends, family members, and acquaintances may distance themselves, fearing association with individuals who have a criminal history. This isolation and rejection can have profound psychological and emotional consequences, exasperating feelings of loneliness, shame, and worthlessness. All of this can come together to trigger the fight or flight response within these individuals with no clear threat to direct all that energy towards. Finally, in Western societies, there is an overabundance of material possessions, resulting in excessive clutter in our homes, offices, and our lives. This surplus of stuff and clutter can trigger our innate response to suffocation. This accumulation of possessions can overwhelm us, creating a sense of helplessness and a constriction not unlike suffocation. People even often use the phrase, "I feel like I'm drowning," or "I can't breathe," when talking about their clutter. Surrounded by excessive amounts of stuff can cause Anxious Andy to evoke sensations of drowning, panic, and uncertainty as we struggle to navigate our physical and mental space amidst all that clutter. This fear of suffocation manifests as feeling of overwhelmed, difficulty making decisions, feelings of loss of control, and being impaired. Now, these are just some examples of how our ancient innate fears can be triggered in the modern world. Because innate fears are universal, every human being has these same innate fears. A version of Anxious Andy exists in people of all races all over the planet. These fears may be expressed differently based on cultural and societal norms, but the potential is always there. Not every person will have their innate fears triggered every time they encounter one of these situations, nor will they necessarily have the same reaction every time. But if you or someone you know seems to be overreacting to a situation or circumstance, and there appears to be no obvious explanation, consider the possibility that it might just be Anxious Andy at work, connecting the dots to an innate fear in some strange and elaborate way. For anxious Andy, it doesn't have to make rational sense. He has a unique way of interpreting the world, but that's the nature of anxious Andy's work, to boldly seek out new terrors in the mundane and tie them back to an innate fear, all in the name of keeping us safe.